The fire swallowed everything. Buildings collapsed like paper. Smoke turned the sky into poison. In the middle of it all, one miner, no soldier, no hero, rushed headfirst into the inferno. He wasn't armed, he wasn't trained. He just saw someone trapped, and he couldn't look away. What he didn't know was that the woman he pulled from the flames wasn't just anyone, she was royalty, and that single act would change the fate of an entire empire. If you love stories where ordinary people do extraordinary things, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit like, tap subscribe, and share this video with a friend who loves epic sci-fi tales. It helps more than you know, and it keeps us bringing you more legends of courage, humanity, and hope. The colony was dying. It wasn't a slow death, the kind people might whisper about in bars or write in dusty reports. It was fast, brutal, and terrifyingly loud. Crimson fire ripped through the settlement's narrow streets, consuming homes, workshops, and the only marketplace this isolated outpost had ever known. The sky itself looked as though it had been set ablaze. Thick columns of smoke choked out the stars, turning the night into a black and orange storm. Somewhere overhead, Dominion raiders screamed past in their sleek, sharp-winged craft. Their bombardments fell like thunderbolts, shattering walls and shaking the ground so hard that entire sections of the colony split apart. The air tasted like burning metal, like poison you couldn't cough out. Most people ran. Of course they did. Families dragged their children through the smoke, clutching bags filled with whatever they could grab in a heartbeat. Others simply sprinted with nothing but the clothes on their backs, their voices lost under the roar of collapsing buildings. Fear was everywhere, and no one could be blamed for it, but not Elias. He didn't run, he charged. And that, perhaps, is what makes this story different. Elias was no soldier, he wasn't trained in tactics, didn't own armor, and the closest thing he had to a weapon was a rusted length of pipe he'd ripped from a water main 2 days before, when Dominion scouts had first been spotted in orbit. He was a miner, born and raised on this colony. Muscles built not from combat drills but from years of hauling stone and metal from beneath the ground. His life had always been about survival. Surviving the shifts, surviving the meager rations, surviving the endless dust that worked its way into everything. But when the fire came, Elias didn't think about survival. He thought about her, not who she was. He couldn't have known that yet. He didn't see the royalty in her or the weight of her bloodline. All he saw was a figure pinned beneath a fallen support beam, flames closing in around her. Most people would have assumed she was already dead. The fire was so close it looked ready to swallow her whole. But Elias caught a glimmer, a shimmer of silver against the black smoke. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't even moving. She just stared, calm, as if she'd already accepted her fate. That was the moment Elias moved. He bolted straight into the inferno, pipe in hand, lungs burning with every step. Heat seared his skin, sweat pouring into his eyes. But none of it mattered. One swing, then another. The pipe crashed against the heavy beam, sparks flying with every strike. He screamed through clenched teeth, leveraging every ounce of strength he had. The metal groaned, the flames roared louder, and finally, the beam shifted just enough. With blistered hands, Elias dragged the woman free. Her weight surprised him. She wasn't fragile like he expected. Taller than him, her skin was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Luminescent, almost metallic, reflecting the orange firelight even through soot and ash. And those eyes, violet, sharp, watching him as though he was a puzzle to be solved. "You risked your life," she said, her voice oddly calm, almost melodic even as the world around them burned. "That's what we do." Elias coughed, half dragging, half hauling her upright. "We don't leave people behind." Then came the thunderclap. A Dominion blast struck close, shaking the colony walls and sending chunks of stone raining down. Elias threw himself over her instinctively, shielding her with his body as dust and fire surged around them. For a few seconds there was nothing but chaos. The roar of collapse, the weight of debris, and the deafening silence afterward. When Elias finally pulled himself up, coughing and raw, they were surrounded by ruins. He gripped her wrist and pulled again, staggering toward what passed for safety. Somehow they stumbled into a bunker, one of the few reinforced shelters built by miners long ago for cave-ins. Only then did he let her go. She stood tall, straightening as though untouched by flames, her silver skin catching what little light filtered into the bunker. Elias leaned against the wall, panting, wiping soot from his eyes. For a long moment she just looked at him, her gaze lingering with something unreadable. "You don't know who I am," she murmured. "Doesn't matter," Elias said, still catching his breath. "You're alive. That's what matters." And in that moment, he believed it. But the truth? It mattered more than he could ever imagine, because what Elias didn't know, what none of the miners could have guessed, was that the woman he had just saved was not a common colonist. She was something else entirely. Royalty. And her survival would alter the fate of empires. The bunker's heavy doors rattled as another blast hit somewhere above. Dust sifted down from the ceiling, coating Elias's hair, clinging to the sweat on his face. He spat into the dirt, lungs burning, then finally allowed himself a look at the woman he had pulled from the fire. What he saw unsettled him. Her skin wasn't just pale, it shimmered faintly, a strange silver that caught even the dim emergency lights. Not the color of ash, not the sheen of metal, but something alive, like moonlight given flesh. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, sharp and piercing, watching him in silence. He'd seen many things in his years as a miner, metals that shone like jewels, gases that burned cold fire. But he had never seen a person like her. She didn't look broken, though she should have. Anyone else would be coughing, staggering, half dead from smoke inhalation. But she stood tall, graceful, shoulders straight as though the inferno had barely touched her. "You really didn't have to do that," she said finally, voice steady, too calm for someone who had almost been crushed alive. Elias barked a laugh, though it came out more like a cough. "Yeah? Tell that to the fire. It wasn't exactly waiting for your permission." Her lips quirked into the faintest smile, but her eyes stayed serious, studying him. "Why risk yourself? You don't even know me." "Doesn't matter," Elias said, rubbing soot from his face with the back of his arm. "You were trapped. That's enough." Outside, the war still raged. The Dominion raiders swept the skies with shrieking engines, their bombardments cracking stone and splintering steel. Every so often the ground trembled as if the world itself was shuddering under the attack. The colony's defenses were few, its militia small, and though the miners fought back with what they could, rifles older than the men holding them, patched up mechs that barely walked, the Dominion's might was overwhelming. But for the moment, in this bunker, the world narrowed to two people, a miner with a rusted pipe, and a woman who looked like she belonged to another world. Elias reached into his pocket, pulling out a dented water flask. "Here," he said, offering it. "You'll need it." She didn't hesitate. She took a sip, then handed it back carefully, almost ceremonially, as though even a miner's battered flask deserved respect. Silence stretched between them for a while. Elias leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for just a moment. He could hear the cries outside, the chaos still tearing the colony apart. But somehow, sitting here beside her, the noise dulled. "You don't know who I am," she said again, more softly this time, almost to herself. Elias opened one eye, smirking despite his exhaustion. "Doesn't matter, you're alive, that's what counts." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful, unreadable. For a second, Elias wondered what kind of secrets she was carrying, what kind of person she really was beneath the silver skin and the calm, unflinching voice. But he didn't ask. It wasn't his way. People were people. Fire didn't care about bloodlines, and neither did he. Then the bunker door groaned. A low alarm beeped. Elias tensed, gripping the pipe in his hand again, ready to fight if he had to. But it wasn't Dominion soldiers. It was guards, armored, grim-faced, their insignias glinting in the emergency light. They moved like men who had drilled since childhood, weapons at the ready, scanning every corner with sharp precision. And when they saw her, their eyes widened in disbelief. "Princess Kalin?" one of them breathed, dropping instantly to one knee. Elias blinked. Wait. What? The woman, Kalin, straightened even taller, her silver skin gleaming, her violet eyes taking on a regal intensity. She nodded once, her voice steady, commanding, though still soft. Rise. The guards obeyed instantly, but their attention flicked to Elias, suspicious, almost hostile. He was soot-streaked, bleeding, clutching a pipe like a makeshift sword. Just a miner standing too close to their princess. Kalin, however, didn't step away. She kept her eyes locked on Elias, as if the entire burning colony had shrunk to this one unlikely man. You risked your life, she said again, this time not as a stranger but as royalty. Elias shrugged, throat raw from smoke. Doesn't change anything. But he was wrong. It changed everything. Because the woman he had saved was no ordinary colonist. She was Kalin Vera, first daughter of the Ellith Empire. Royalty. The kind of royalty who commanded fleets and shaped destinies. And in the ruins of a dying colony, that truth had just been forged into something unbreakable. A bond between a miner and a princess that would ripple across the stars. Outro, 200 words. And that is only the beginning. What started with fire and smoke will spread far beyond one burning colony. Elias, a miner with nothing but courage and a rusted pipe, has already altered the path of history, without even realizing it. Because when you save a life, you don't just save a person. Sometimes, you save an empire. But here's the real question. What happens next? Will the nobles accept a miner standing at the side of their princess? Or will Dominion raiders strike again, determined to crush this unlikely bond before it grows into something unstoppable? That is the beauty of stories like this. Ordinary people becoming extraordinary by refusing to look away when it matters most. Elias didn't know he was saving royalty. He just knew someone needed help. And in that one choice, he showed us the raw, unshakable spirit of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves epic sci-fi legends. Because together, we'll keep telling the tales that remind us why, in every corner of the galaxy, humans are never just survivors, they're legends.